give a warm welcome to Samata Pattinson.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Wow, this is amazing. Okay, my name's Samata Pattinson, and I'm the CEO of RCGD Global. And it was my privilege and honor to join Maggie Baird, the founder of Support and Feed, her daughter Billie Eilish, and her son Finneas earlier this year at the annual Academy Awards, where they took home their first Oscar. Very well deserved. And we started a conversation on that red carpet about sustainable fashion that we're continuing here today. Maggie wore this beautiful dress by Matteo Benedetti, and it's made from a vegan fiber called Tencel. It's biodegradable, natural dyes. And Billie wore a gorgeous vintage accessory set to spotlight vintage. And we're continuing that conversation here today with you guys at Overheated. So I'm in a kind of catch-22 situation. I love clothes. To me, clothing is identity. It's how you express yourself. And honestly, as someone who considers herself a bit of an oddball in the fashion industry, it's how I express my quirks as well. But on the flip side, I love sustainability. I think sustainability is the soul of the fashion industry. So how can you love clothing, but then know how fashion is being made is hurting people and planet? And trust me, fashion is hurting people and planet. On an environmental side, the fashion industry created 1.8 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases in 1 year. And we make 20% of the water pollution through our textile industry. And that's just on the environmental side. On the social side, we have major issues with garment worker exploitation and a massive issue with race and inequity as well. But fashion and climate is a little bit insane as well. So the fashion industry contributes 6 to 10% of global greenhouse gases. And that kind of blows my mind to think, like, how do the clothes that we wear create that kind of climate change and that kind of impact? So I wanted to ask you all to do something to try and help bring it home, like how we get here. I'd love you all to just touch a single piece of item that you're wearing today. Everything we wear comes from fabrics. You could be wearing cotton, organic cotton, polyester, recycled polyester, linen or hemp. Our fabric comes from farms and fields and forests. And if it doesn't, it uses oceans and air. And in that process, it creates climate change. So I'll give you a really quick example of a cotton t-shirt. The cotton is farmed, and the farmer will normally pour chemicals into the soil. And in that process, nitrous oxide is created, which is a lethal greenhouse gas. And then that fiber will be sent somewhere, and it will be yarned and spun into a textile, using machinery and creating energy, creating climate change. And finally, that fabric gets handed over to the people that I call the magicians of our industry, our seamstresses and our artisans, because I think it's amazing how something can go into a machine and turn into something that clothes us. But they use machines in well-lit factories, and that creates impact as well. But the thing that probably blows my mind the most is that 70% of where our impact comes from, even before you and I get dressed and access these clothes. Once we get them, we have a potential to reduce climate change. What we buy, where we buy it from, how we wear it, how we look after it, and then finally, when we're done with it, how we dispose of it. And that's the conversation that I'm so excited to be having and sharing right now with Tati and Eshita, talking about the different things that we can do to reduce our climate change impact. But I do want to just make the little caveat that I am 100% not saying that all of you guys, it's on you to save us from climate change by changing the way that you wear clothes alone. So I hope that gives you a sigh of relief. It's just to let you know that we're part of it. We need investors to put money behind people that are really trying to create solutions for fashion. And we need legislation as well, because the fashion industry is wildly unlegislated. But we do have a role to play. So I'm really excited to bring forward 2 women who are doing really cool things in the space of sustainability to talk about the different choices that they're making and the different ways that every single one of us can create a positive impact. Thank you for letting me speak. Hello. Could you welcome Eshita, Kabra-Davies, and Tati Gabrielle? Thank you. I got the really bad one. Just went down by about a foot in height. Great. Thank you so much. So I wanted to introduce, first of all, to my left, Tati Gabrielle.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys?
So as a little bit of context, Tati is an incredible actor. You might have seen her in Uncharted with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. She's also in the Netflix series You. And she's also a really phenomenal kind of advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, sustainability, and lots of positive work like that. Tati, would you say a few words about yourself? Anything I've left out?
Sure. I'm from the Bay Area of California. I was born in, my mother is Korean, my father is Black, so I'm proudly mixed race. I feel like you said pretty much everything. And I'm a big advocate not only for diversity initiatives as well as youth empowerment, mental health awareness, and of course sustainability. Let's save the planet.
Thank you. Wonderful. And then we have Eshita Kabra-Davies, who I kind of crossed paths with working in the fashion industry, and I kept hearing about this really cool platform where community building was taking place and clothing rental was taking place. And I was fortunate enough to meet Eshita, and she's really trying to change the way that we exchange and essentially kind of acquire clothing. So Eshita, welcome. Thank you for being here, and please tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much again, Samata, for making me a part of this incredible event, and super nice to meet all of you, I guess. My name is Eshita, and I'm the founder of By Rotation. We're a social network where you can lend and rent contemporary and designer fashion with each other. So you can save money, you can make money, you can save the planet, and become friends with new people all at the same time. A little bit about myself, because I always put the company first. So I was born in Rajasthan in India, which is very popularly known for textile production. A lot of what you wear when it says made in India, it's most often actually made in Rajasthan. I grew up in Singapore, and I moved to the US and the UK for university. So I think of myself very much as a global citizen. And for me, things like diversity and inclusion is really important. And even things like making sustainability accessible and attainable for people of all walks of life. I think that's probably a conversation we're going to have.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So this panel is about the face of fashion and this idea of there is a relationship between fashion and sustainability. So I wanted to ask you, when did you first become aware of the fact that the clothing that we all wear has any type of impact on people or planet? When did you realize that actually there might be a relationship between fashion and climate, or even just fashion and sustainability? I'll ask you first, Tati.
For me, I remember when I was, I think in either late high school or early college, I remember the first time I saw a picture of a Goodwill and the back house and these mountains of clothing that I was like, there's no way that they can sell all of this. So then my next question was, what are they doing with it? Which is then what led me down the deep dive of everything that you spoke about in your speech, and realizing how much impact that clothing has and how we don't do well to dispose of it or anything like that. And from there, it just made me start to, really think about what I was wearing, how I can just in the little things of, I go thrift shopping all the time. That's one of my favorite things to do. I like to take my clothes and repurpose them. So if I have a shirt or something that has a stain on it, then I can rip it up and I can make part of that shirt into a scarf. And just trying to continue to educate myself, because I'm still learning of how fashion is impacting the climate. Just on a journey.
That's such a great example, though, when you talked about the mountain of clothes, because we are overproducing. I think the stats are that we're making 400% more stuff than we did 20 years ago. So the piles, it's quite excessive, and we're also wearing it for less time. So there's this kind of accumulation effect. So thank you for that example. That was a really beautiful one. And Eshita, what about you? What was your moment when you saw that, hang on a minute, there's a relationship here between fashion and climate, or even just fashion and sustainability?
Yeah, I think I'm a self-confessed ex-shopaholic. So growing up in Singapore, there's two national hobbies. One is eating and the other is shopping. So for me, the outdoors, because it's a city-state, right? So I think it's even smaller than London, or maybe and the population is smaller than London. And we never had anything like the countryside. So for me, the outdoors were shopping malls. So I grew up with a very sort of shopaholic kind of mindset. And I think, when I started working, I had this disposable income. People think a lot about things like payday and how they're going to, take advantage of that, go out with their friends, wear a new outfit. And I think, seeing all of that around me, I was, I didn't really think much about fashion besides the fact that it was a way for me to express style. It wasn't actually until about 3 years ago, well, a little longer now, that I was planning my honeymoon back to my motherland, which is Rajasthan in India. And I hadn't been back for about 13, 14 years, and I wanted to bring my husband, who's not Indian, and he's not, he's never, he wanted to see my roots and where I grew up, and I wanted to reconnect. And while planning this honeymoon, I started thinking about all the outfits that I wanted to wear for this trip of a lifetime. And a lot of us do that. We buy clothing for holidays, right? And so I started thinking about this idea of sharing clothes, renting fashion, and how a lot of it was very much for special occasions, like balls and things like that. And I thought I would love to reach out to these women on social media platforms who often wear outfits only once, that outfit of the day hashtag, and maybe say, can I borrow your clothes and pay for it? Would it be weird? So kind of like Airbnb or Uber, very much about the sharing economy. Yeah. And it wasn't actually until my honeymoon that I witnessed a lot of textile waste. So, that photograph that you saw really coming to life. And I felt very guilty because I was going back to my suburban hometown after 14 years and living in the Western world. I was donating all this clothing, and 90% of that goes to landfills in Asian and African countries. Yeah. It sort of felt, I don't know, very imbalanced, kind of almost racist, to be honest. And I just thought, I don't want to be a part of this, and this fashion rental idea that I have, why not make it something really real and get people to share what they already have with each other? Yeah. So that was my moment, I suppose.
Well, that's wonderful. That's really beautiful. And you mentioned something that I wonder, Tati, I feel like you could relate to as well, and maybe all of us can relate to. It's like the pressure of the fact that once you've worn something, there's this expectation that you're not allowed to wear it again, like especially for special occasions and things like that. You talked about festivals and stuff like that, but we know that if you hold on to, like if every single person here wore like a thrifted or wore the same outfit a second time, held on to it for like another 9 months, we're reducing carbon waste and water. So there's a pressure that's put on us as well, and we're aware of that, to constantly keep up with things, and that is really, really unfair. I was curious, Tati, when she was talking, because you're in the public eye, and I mean, this girl really does rock a red carpet. You're so, so, so iconic with your style as well. But do you feel that pressure sometimes, just to kind of always present something new?
Yeah, very much so. And it's something that, especially in the last 2 years, that I've thought more about, of like, why? Yeah, we don't need to. I was saying to Eshita earlier, I'm very sentimental about things, especially with my clothing. Like, I love when a piece has a story, like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Like, it's like, where's this piece been? What adventure did it take someone on? And so with that, like, with the idea of, every carpet, it's like you have to be different. You have to wear something new. You can't wear the same thing that somebody else wore last season. It's like, well, why can't we just reframe the perspective to go, well, this is this person in it. This is this person expressing themselves through it. To find a different point of focus. It shouldn't be about the clothes. It should be about the person wearing them and how they're using the clothes as a projection of self. So with me, when it comes to, and this is something that I'm, still working to figure out a way through, but when it comes to when I pick red carpet things, when I do feel the pressure to have to do something different, I always make sure that I go with sustainable brands, or that I research whoever it is that's trying to dress me. That's the first question I always ask. Do you have a sustainability plan? Do you have sustainable clothing within, or are you on a path towards it? Nice. And if not, it's a no-go for me. Wow. Straight up. And same thing with brand deals, with everything else. I'm like, no, because I'm not going to promote your thing that is killing our planet to millions of people. Wow. to make it worse.
Can I just say that's amazing to make those kind of choices? Oh my God, I got some goosebumps. That's amazing to make those kind of choices because you're probably inundated. I remember having a bit of a joke with Maggie about kind of the sizes of some of the boxes of the stuff that Billie gets sent. And she's just like, this is, and again, even Billie, like the way that she customizes stuff, I'm sure you guys notice that. Like she customizes things, she makes it her own. And I love what you said, why can't we use this as an opportunity to focus on the person? And why versus what they're wearing. So that was beautiful. I wanted to move the conversation a bit onto your communities because you have different kinds of communities. So, for example, with Eshita, with By Rotation, and I use that app, it's fantastic. I'd love you to talk about the conversations you're having with your community, and not necessarily even about sustainability, but are they interested in it? How do you talk about it in a way where people don't feel like you're preaching to them? Because that is a bit of a danger of sustainability, that sometimes people think like, here comes someone to lecture me about what I need to do, and that can be a barrier. So I was just curious about, with your community, how do you talk to them? Are they interested and what are they saying?
Yeah, and I think that's, so given the fact that I, really only understood the problem of waste in the fashion industry about 3.5 years ago, I feel very new to it as well. And I think it's been important that we make it, the tone that we use, even the branding that we have on the app, the free app, it's very accessible, inclusive to even the person who still does shop fast fashion, because to be honest, that's only what they can afford. So you shouldn't make people feel guilty that that's what they can afford. And I think it's really about giving them, that educational point, which we do by nudging them, like when you're renting something from another person, you'll see at the checkout the positive savings that you make from renting the item rather than buying new. So things like textile waste, water waste, carbon emissions. And I think that's been a great way to nudge people. But I would say first and foremost, people are using By Rotation more for affordability. Because it's hard. Sustainability is, sustainable fashion is kind of a privilege. It's quite exclusive. It's like sustainable designers can be also at higher price points because they don't make that much quantity. That's the whole point, So things are more expensive. But for us, it's really about beating that fast fashion brand and telling people you can rent a designer piece for 10% of the retail price for a weekend. You can still go to your graduation, you can still go to your ball or your holiday or whatever, and still feel very much like you're part of this community that is making small efforts, while you might still be on Oxford Street, Yeah. So I think it's baby steps rather than expecting people to change completely overnight, black and white.
Yeah. And you raised a really good point about fast fashion, because obviously fast fashion gets a bit of a pummeling in the sustainable fashion space because it's making a lot of clothing, and it's lower cost clothing, and often the workers who create that clothing are absorbing the costs. Like it isn't inexpensive. It's just there's a cost we don't see, right? But then it comes across as a judgment, because if that's what you can afford, then that's what you can afford. So I think that's a call out on fashion brands to create better and to do better. It's not about shaming people that shop there all the time because that's what they can afford. Tati, I was curious about your community, because you have people that obviously follow your work and look up to you. Are they conversations you're having with them about sustainability? Like I know you went to the Oscars for us and you looked incredible. Was there curiosity from your community? What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems that it's something that people are very much open to, which excites me. And that's always the first thing. The idea of not shaming people is always the first stance that I take. And also to make it smaller for them, because I do feel that a lot of people look at sustainability, look at this as this grandiose idea, this thing of like, well, I'm one person, what am I supposed to do? Like my little brother is here with me today. And through the last few days, I've been educating him, and he's like, "Well, it's really hard to find like sustainable." I was like, "It's not as hard as you think it is. Like even like H&M has a conscious line now that the places are trying, they are taking steps." And so I try to tell people it's the little things of get a refillable water bottle instead of buying plastic water bottles. Make yourself a recycling bin if you don't have one already in your house. It like Eshita said, it's baby steps, and that's what I try to push to people always, and diminish the just the stigma around it. And I find too that when people are hard, I've met someone who was a sustainability advocate that was like got angry with people when he would see a plastic bag come out or something like that. And I was like, that's counterintuitive. People want to help. People want to grow. It's about you doing that with them and having compassion for them while you do it.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, and I've met those angry people too. And I go through angry phases, like I do look at the planet sometimes, and I don't know who's watched Look Up on Netflix with Leonardo, but there's a few scenes where he just loses it and he's like, you're not listening. And I understand that rage too, because we genuinely care about this planet. I mean, again, kudos to Billie, Finneas, Maggie, Support and Feed, Reverb for doing this. Like, this is really walking the walk, right? And every one of you here, like, you clearly care to even make the journey here. But that does sometimes kind of create an inaccessibility to the conversation. So thank you for sharing that. Let's get to some practical tips as well. So I'd love you each to just like riff with me some questions I have that maybe might reflect questions from the audience. So, and Eshita, you're not allowed to say by rotation. Okay, so the first question I was going to ask you is, how do you each shop sustainably?
Do you want to go first?
So I actually think a lot about the use per wear.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about, I'm going to invest in higher quality pieces. And if anything's a bit trend-led, I will rotate it. Sorry, I will share it.
Oh my God.
I can't help myself, I'm sorry.
It's okay, we love it.
But yeah, it's really about thinking about how much wear I'm going to get from things, because I think the minimum amount of times that you should be able to wear a new item that you buy is 30. So I think about that a lot now.
Nice, that's good. And you?
Likewise, same thing. I think of how much wear I can get out of it. I also make sure that I look at the tag and to see what materials it's made out of, because something that's made out of 100% plastic is not, despite how long I can wear it, once it goes, it's gonna do bad things. Yeah. As well as, I always think to trade, like Eshita's saying, like Buffalo Exchange is one of my favorite places as well for the same reason. It's a place that we have in the States of when I'm done with clothes, I take it there. You can trade it out, swap it out, and I can leave with new clothes. Nice. So I try to think also is if I can fix it. Anything that I've picked up sewing little bits. There's also tons of DIY things on Instagram that I found of making like fun patches out of holes. So yeah.
I love that. And there's a really cool brand here in the UK called Wool in the Gang. And they send out, I saw some people nodding, but they send out knitting kits, which is really cool. So they'll send you a pattern, they'll send you the actual kind of wool, and you can knit as a community. It's really, really cool. That DIY movement is so amazing, and I love that. And just to flag what you said about oil, most polyester is made from crude oil and non-renewable resources, and lots of people don't know that, so it's a synthetic. So once it goes to the landfill, that's an incineration. So that's a good one, looking at the label and choosing natural fabrics when you can. Another question I wanted to ask is, because remember I said earlier about kind of when we get our clothing, the biggest intervention we can all have is how we look after that. So how do you guys look after your clothes more sustainably? Like, how do you treat them?
Again, like I read I like that, which is something I didn't do in my younger years. Like, and I ruined so many clothes when I was little. But now I look at the label, look at the washing instructions. I try to do it that way. And then, like I said, I try to repair things where I can, or repurpose them and like combine things, take piece from this, and put things together.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think for me, I don't really like to use dry cleaners that much. So a lot of stuff is hand washed. And yeah, I think, to be honest, you don't need to wash everything after wearing it just once either. I think people think, oh, I've worn a pair of jeans today, so I'm wearing it. I can't wear it tomorrow because it's dirty. Yeah. It needs to be cleaned. Yeah. And I didn't realize that when I was younger. Yeah. So now I'm kind of like, not that my clothes smell or I smell.
I was going to say, use the smell test. Smell test.
But I think that's probably a big one, and that's how you can care for your clothes and they can go longer as well.
Nice. And I think the other question I wanted to ask was about something you both touched on, which was about kind of accessibility for people at different stages of life and with different disposable incomes. And I know we keep hearing, and I agree with you, sustainable fashion is expensive for lots of people, but I think that's because we haven't defined it broadly enough, because it does include vintage and secondhand, and it does include mending, and it does include just sharing it. I have two sisters who are in the audience right now, and their wardrobe was my wardrobe when we were growing up, and did they always consent to that? No. But the point is, that's part of sustainability too. So I don't want you to feel that you have to buy only brands that have, organic certifications or whatever to be able to be part of this conversation. Like you can, whatever your walk is. So can you give examples of ways that culturally, for example, because you mentioned your culture, which is really amazing, maybe cultural expressions of sustainability or just how people from different walks of life express sustainability?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Definitely sharing with your relatives, your sister. Oh, my sister hated me when I used to borrow her clothes without asking her. But we're like the best friends now. So you do have to go through that, I think, in childhood. But I would also say, the other thing is this skirt is, I guess you would call it like a high street fast fashion brand. But I've had it for over 8 years. Luckily, I still fit into it, so that's great. But otherwise, you can, as long as you're getting a lot of wear from even fast fashion brands, I think that's still also being mindful and conscious of your consumption. Yeah. And I would call that being sustainable, right? It's about using what you already have and loving it. And if you must really add something new, then really think about how much wear you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, that's good.
That's something that I really think about a lot, is I always challenge myself to be more creative with what, instead of looking at my closet and going, well, I've worn all this, I'm bored with it, I go, okay, but there's something else here. Just like you can have 5 paints and make 1,000 paintings. Yeah. So it's like, what else can I do? What else can I, and it doesn't, and stepping out of trend and being like, well, what if I make up a new one by tying this thing around my arm and letting it dangle off? So yeah, I think culturally we can just be more creative in general, or challenge ourselves to be more creative.
That's really nice. That's a very positive one as well, that idea of creativity and a bit of hope. The last question I wanted to ask, and I know that we've got kind of a few minutes left, is when it comes to the fashion industry, because I know we've said this before, but this isn't on only you guys, I don't want you sitting here going, oh my gosh, I've got like another list of things to do. This is a call to the industry as well. Like things have to be done differently. And with our work, we're lucky. We work with Material Innovators as a great company we work with called Tencel, and they're making biodegradable, like vegan, plant-based fibers. Like Maggie's dress is compostable. We would never do that to your dress, Maggie, but we're just saying we could, in case she comes and runs on here. But there are great solutions for this industry, and my question to you would be, if you were speaking to the fashion industry and you were saying, like, how can we do things differently? How can we reduce waste, or how can we kind of pioneer? What would you maybe say? What would those calls to action be from both of you?
For me, it would be one, to ask everyone to be transparent and to show their sustainable practices, no matter how far along in their process that they are. But even to show that they're making an effort, I think can go a long way. And I think also with the way that they advertise and market things, like I was thinking the other day, I'm like, what if brands put out new collections once every other year? Yeah. Or if just that they would push people to, like I said, to be creative and to be like, use this in a million different ways. That if they market it and instead of making people feel like they needed to buy the next thing and stay on trend. So yeah, I think marketing, just change the perspective.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
That's such a big one.
Yeah. Over to you, Eshita.
I think for me, it would just be to produce less. Yeah. I think, and to be honest, it's not just high street brands that are doing this. Even luxury fashion houses are producing a lot of stuff. I mean, you talked about how Billie gets a lot of stuff, and I think that's happening not just with Billie, but also, like people who are, sort of smaller content creators and influencers. It's just crazy how much product there is out there. There's no reason why people, I don't know. I think I've seen that now, doing what I do, and I'm just, appalled. So less stuff.
Less stuff. Fantastic. Well, that brings our session to an end. Please, join me in kind of thanking Tati and Eshita for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys.